Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Good? All right, so I was told to keep my speech to a minimum. I had like a 10, 15-minute speech planned, but I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible here. I'd like to thank all my friends and family who have traveled here to Cleveland to make this not only an awesome induction ceremony, but also a reunion of sorts. I haven't seen some of the guys in this room for about 20 years, so thanks to the Mac Hall of Fame for bringing us all together. The first person I'll thank individually is my brother. He's sitting right here at table 14. As a kid, he always was a hyper kid, and he used to get us in all sorts of trouble. And one day we were playing Ninja Warrior, and he tried to jump kick towards me, nearly caving in my chest. I moved kind of like Neo in the Matrix, and he ended up putting a hole into the wall. So his first comment was, "Why the heck did you move?" Now we're in trouble with mom and dad. The annoying thing about brothers is they know how to get under our skin. My brother, who was in the Big Ten, we won't mention them too much tonight, but he was making noise early in his college career, and he had just come home for the summer. In fact, it was the same summer we went through a terrible hurricane, Hurricane Andrew, which ravaged our home in Miami. We had holes in our roof, no AC, no TV. We couldn't go to the mall, no heading to South Beach with friends. Even the public supermarket I worked at had blown down, so there was really not much to do. All that passed the time was cooking outside on the grill and listening to my brother's big mouth. Because I didn't place my junior year in the state tournament. "Dwight, you'll never be good. Dwight, you suck. Quit now because you'll always be a choker." Those were the words out of my big brother's mouth. So I think I dedicated myself at that point to try to trumpet whatever he did in college. He ended up taking third in the national tournament for Northwestern, and you know, I always looked up to him for that. He was my hero, but because he made those words back in that summer, I knew I had to place higher than third. So my commitment to prove him wrong helped me go undefeated my last year of high school, which led to Coach Huska, who is also here in attendance and also a Hall of Famer himself, rolled the dice on me as a relatively unknown wrestler. I never appeared in any magazine rankings. I never attended high school nationals. I wasn't heavily recruited. In fact, I was set to basically hang up my wrestling shoes and live out my college years as a regular student, drinking and partying it up at Florida State. In the 11th hour, I decided to take a chance with Ohio University based on Harry's belief in me. He had just signed Sean Enright, who is also here tonight. Thanks for coming up, Sean, who was a national high school champion, and I felt the program was on the rise. "Sean, I watched you do amazing things. You were the coolest cat at OU on campus, had the hottest girls on his arms. He captured many of the sport headlines in the newspapers. His dad was at every match and became like a team father. He ended up placing fourth in his true freshman year, setting the bar really high for the rest of us on the team. In our senior year, he led the way to our 9th place finish at Nationals, which happened to be right here in Cleveland, by being an NCAA finalist himself. Now, one interesting thing I have to say about that year is there's 10 guys that make up a college wrestling team, and we kind of got decimated in the MAC conference championships. We only took 2 guys to nationals. So for us to go 9-1 and both of us be finalists was kind of amazing. And I think we basically just kind of put the team on our backs and took us to that 9th place finish. So Sean, you already know you're like my brother from another mother, and we've always said that. And Rowan, you got another brother in Sean. And one other thing before I move off from Sean, I'd like to start his campaign to one day get up here himself. Coach Huska, there are some people who are just really undescribable. You're always unfamiliar to most, but there was something about you that I was drawn to make me switch from, just being a normal college student to trying to compete at a college level. So I thought you had rolled the dice on me, but the more I think about it, you kind of realize I was a little bit young at the time and I graduated a little early, and you kind of felt that a lot of colleges passed me by because I was not as old as my peers who were graduating with me. So you're kind of, in a way, a lot smarter than a lot of people give you credit for, and I always thank you for that. Coach Dwight, you've been there from my 8th grade year. I still remember you convincing my parents to allow Rowan and I to continue wrestling. My parents are very old school Jamaicans. In fact, our whole family is from Jamaica, and they couldn't be here tonight because they're tending to one of my uncles who is sick down there. But they were more of the education type. They didn't think sports were, a necessity in our household. So, Coach Dwight, I remember that night where you were sitting out with my mom till God knows what hour, but trying to convince her to let myself and my brother continue to compete. I also remember the only Jewish guy brave enough to come down into the middle of the projects of Perrine, where we grew up, with a Chrysler minivan every Saturday morning to pick up a bunch of boys from the hood for wrestling practice. It was a spectacle, I'm sure. You were also the first real businessman and entrepreneur I ever knew. I still conduct business today using much of your guiding principles that you taught me on and off the mat. Thank you. Coach Wimberly, you were the toughest and most dominant pound-for-pound wrestler I ever seen. Unfortunately, I had to battle him each and every day in practice for 3 years. He cracked me deep and brought out the warrior in me. It was either I quit and give in or elevate to his level. You were also instrumental in leading me to OU, which you were an alumni. You're now helping lots of young men at St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the country's best private schools and one of Florida's best wrestling programs. Thank you for pushing me to my limits as a wrestler. I know you were really looking forward to being here tonight. He couldn't make it because he had an emergency come up, but I just wanted to really thank him for his push and his drive to me. Coach Soderholm, you taught us to never have excuses. If we sprained an ankle, we had another. If we jammed a finger, we had 9 others. You also taught us respect. It's funny, because we had a guy by the name of Kimbo Slice attend my high school in Miami. A lot of you know Kimbo as a street brawler who took the internet by storm with some of his backyard brawls and foray into the mixed martial arts. Well, Kimbo walked into our wrestling room one day, swearing he was the toughest and roughest kid around. He came in thinking that he could start as our 220-pounder, and he wrestled off Rooney Thomas, which he lost to. Kimbo started to mouth off and disrespect our Coach Soderholm. So Coach, not being more than 5'10", 180 pounds, picked up Kimbo and dumped him into a trash can, which I still think is a pretty funny thing for a big bad dude like Kimbo. I think this was his way of telling Kimbo that his attitude was trash. This type of discipline Soderholm preached. Just because you were big, bad, and tough didn't mean you could mouth off and be disrespectful. I also want to thank Mom, Dad, Kay, my Miami Palmetto High School teammates, including the championship team of '96, Sean's, your supportive family, Padron, Reichenbach, Corto, Durio, Kimball, Heffernan, Harvey, Bednar, Schilling, Worthy, Kaiser, 1 and 2, Noble, Calhoun, and my entire OU Bobcat family. I would name you all here, but this speech would go on forever. Finally, I'd like to personally congratulate the other 5 members of the 2017 MAC Hall of Fame induction class. I think that's it for me. I appreciate you guys and your time. I appreciate you guys. Ken, for giving me a lot of history about this conference ceremony tonight, and I really appreciate being part of it. Good night.